Welcome to Three Thoughts On. Today, I am excited to begin a new series on book reviews, and my guest is Marina Lazaris. Marina, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. It's such an honor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me and to do this recording with me. If we can get started, just by you giving us a little bit of background on who you are and how did you get to do something that you seem to love quite a bit?
Yeah. Who am I? And I love this question. As I always say, that I'm a soul walking a human experience. That's who I really am. I had a bit of an awakening experience from a very young age. My dad nearly died when I was young. My dad was very spiritual at the same time, and my parents had a lot of trauma, immigrational trauma, war trauma, and so I was coaching them and acting at times as part of my childhood. So when I got into school, I studied philosophy, I studied theology, I studied psychology. There's a school age. And then coming up to 40, I was like, it was a big milestone for me. And I was like, what do I want? And I was like, I don't want anything. All I want is my knowledge to what I've experienced in my life to be accessible to everyone. Everyone to be able to have this, hence the book. I wanted my message to get out there, and I wanted people not to feel alone because I felt alone. And I remember when I was young, both my parents didn't work at a stage when I was growing up, and I used to read my little proverbs and the Bible and things to get through my childhood. So in a way, this book is similar. It's questions and answers. It's almost like that same structure where someone can pick it up and put it down at any time. And as I say it, like this light just came out of nowhere and just, wow. But it is to bring some lightness and fun because all these topics can get very deep: love, sex, relationships. And let's just bring some lightness and fun and not take ourselves too seriously. I kind of bring my own experiences as well as my theories because I've obviously studied this stuff, right, in depth as a trained coach, relationship coach, and an actor. Like I've studied all of this stuff and I love it all.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're
So,
welcome.
the title of your book, I actually had a couple of conversations yesterday with people. I was telling them that I was doing my first, book review, and the
Yeah.
title of the book is "Men Need Love Too." A man's simple guide to sex and relationships. And some of I didn't get any negative reactions, but it was kind of like, really? Because it seems like we live in a world that is so divided right now. We live in a very interesting time.
Yeah.
I love the times that we're in because it allows us, on one hand, to do things like this, to meet, across the pond in real
Yeah.
time and have an
Yeah.
interaction and share the various things that we're going to share today. But it is also a time where it seems like we there are forces that want us to pick sides, right? And um, when you say men need love too, uh, tell me more about the title of the book. Why did you feel this needed to be said and written?
The title of the book actually came after the book, right? And it was like, what is my message to the world? And I really reflected on that. What do I want it to be? And in my heart, it was like, okay, this is a message because, like anything, I think we need to help things get back into balance. And men were coming to me, and the balance had shifted too much the other way, where men were being condemned for everything. And as a woman, having these men come to me and say, look, Maria, this is what I'm struggling with. And they had nowhere to go, right? They couldn't go to other men and they couldn't go to women. And so they were carrying around these burdens and this shame. that really wasn't theirs, and having their voice, their throat chakra suppressed. And I know that male suicide is on the rise, right? So it's like, okay, let's just address that. I'm pro men, but I think nobody says that, right? It's like pro women. Just imagine like all these men were going like, hey, pro men. Like everyone would be like, what? But somebody has to say it, right? Someone has to say it, and I'm that person.
Well, no, that's very interesting. You say that because you mentioned the word balance, right? So it seems like we've lost the balance, and I fully agree with you. I've been as of recently also becoming a student of the feminine and the masculine,
Yeah.
and it seems like there is a departure. And you mentioned this in your book about the narratives, right? In your introduction, you talk about the narratives that are demolishing masculinity. In other words, there is a feminine, the true feminine, and what people think that is, and then there's the true masculine and what people think that is. And more, it seems like what people think it is becomes farther and farther away from the true essence of it, right? So in your eyes, first of all, do you agree with me? And if not, please correct
Yeah,
me as I go
of,
along.
of course. I mean, like as I say it, I feel like a sadness like comes up, right? Because it's sad. Because society, porn, films, the internet, they push all these narratives on people, and people then play roles because it goes into their subconscious mind rather than going and they blame. And, instead of coming together and going, okay, right, let's respect one another. Let's, know that there's masculine and feminine in everyone. How can I respect that in myself? And if you can't respect that and balance that in you, then how can you do that with another?
Well, in order to do that, right, there has to be an awareness, right? There has to be an awareness of, you mentioned again, the roles, and with roles come expectations, right? And then with expectations come, somebody once told me a while ago that expectations are premeditated resentments, right? These are things that are, you know, someone taught us this is the way things should be, and therefore this is the way I'm going to behave, and that's probably one of the first points where the imbalance starts, which is manliness versus masculinity, right? This is something also that you touched upon in your book. What do you see the difference between those two is? Manliness, or proper manliness, the way society describes it, and true masculinity.
Yeah, I suppose the manliness, the way the society is currently depicting it is, do, achieve, get the house, get the car, get the woman, follow the herd mentality, be one of the boys, don't cry, suck it up. And so then you've got true masculinity is being grounded. It's being, I would say, to be able to hold space, to be that container for emotions. But how can you contain others' emotions and, cycles that could be happening throughout life if you've never sat with or contained your own emotions? If you've never been in a position where the feminine hasn't nurtured you, right? Or you haven't had that nurturing. So it is a cycle. Hence why I'm like, hey, this is my perspective from a nurturing voice. And a bit of both. There's a bit of balance in there in the book. But I think that's the main thing. But again, with love and no judgment, right? To not make necessarily that wrong, but saying, how's it serving you at the moment, this life? Are you getting to the next goal, the next goal, the next thing, great, but how Are you sitting with your feelings? Are you tuning into that? Is it fulfilling your soul? Like the next woman, or, are you in flow state? Are you following your passions, your purposes? Are you giving back? Are you serving humanity? Like, it's just a different energy.
That's interesting. So let me throw something at you and see if this resonates with your experience and the men that you've coached and talked with. I had a conversation years ago with an old friend, and we were talking about, I still am in corporate America. I've been in corporate America for about 27 years. And corporate America tends to be a very manly environment, right? And it's only until recently where women have been given the opportunity to have a voice and to make a change, and to participate in a healthy way. But the conversation that I was having with my friend was that it it is inevitable. It doesn't matter which company you're in. You're going to find at some point a manager, a a director, a vice president of some sort, um, who is just not very effective at what they do, uh, observably unhappy with what
Yeah.
they do, um, unconscious about how their actions impact the people around them,
Yeah.
right? And we started talking about that, and we concluded, and again, this is where I would love your feedback. We concluded that it was probably because that person, that man, specifically that man, never really wanted to be there. This was probably a guy who
Yeah.
became an engineer like me
Mhm.
and got his first job, and he was happy being an engineer. He got married, had kids, he had
Yeah.
a 9 to 5 job that he was really good at. And he came home, he played with the kids, he spent time with his wife. They went to the soccer games or the baseball games or the football games, and everything was great until, because of how good he was at what he was doing, he got promoted. And with the promotion came more money, more responsibilities, but also a departure from what he was really good at. But then he pushed harder because that's the expectation, do more, be more, become more. And there comes another promotion. And with every promotion, this person became more used to the financial advancements, and the family needed more of that money. But he became farther and farther away from that sweet spot of happiness that he had in the beginning, where he didn't have as much money,
Mm.
but he was happy. He was happy
Mm.
with his family life. He was happy with his job as an engineer, as an individual contributor. He didn't need to be a manager, right? But the machine, right, gets you in
Mm.
this hamster wheel of go more, and then you go for that more, and then you get used to the more, but you lose yourself in the process, and now you're in this position you never really wanted to be in, and
Mm.
now you're unhappy, and by default you're making everyone around you unhappy, but you can't talk to anyone about it because you're supposed to be a provider, you're supposed to deliver, you're supposed to do all these things. Does this resonate, or do
Yeah.
you see it in a different way?
Oh, I totally resonate with this, with what you're saying, because I've been around this and I've been around it in my personal life directly. And again, that's self betrayal when you don't have a strong sense of self. And this is where people don't work on themselves. The number one thing you should be doing is going, okay, what are my values? Who am I? What lights me up? Now, knowing this is essential because otherwise you'll be poured down roads that you don't want to go down, and you'll self betray yourself. So, what happens if you self betray? or you don't like who you look at in the mirror. You don't like to see that reflection reflecting back at you. So if you don't like yourself and the inner critic then is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, where do you go? Well, you go to criticizing everyone else around you. And then you're just getting that negative cycle and that negative loop feeding back to you. And then it's just a downward spiral from there, because unless you know, okay, I can now focus on a different vision and cut your ties and be like, hey, there's a different vision. And I am not attached to the career. I'm not attached to the job title. I'm not attached to the money. Unless you have fierce courage to go, hey, I can start something else, then you will destroy your whole life and everyone else's life around you. And the universe will show you a different direction. Hence, probably end up in a divorce. Or other relationships will literally go away around you, right? So never self-betray. And often those that self-betray betray others. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because they've just chased. They've chased things which don't really resonate with their true values because they've chased an image of society that they think they need to be, rather than going, hey, let's slow down. Okay, what's important? Okay, when I'm on my deathbed, what's really going to matter? It's the moments I've spent with them individuals, they're going to flash before my eyes. And that might sound a bit woo-woo, but that's all you have. You don't take nothing else with you. And if all their moments are just that, and you're just frustrated and angry, you know, like, I feel very sad for people like that, you know, and because it's just an illusion.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And you touched on a couple of things there. And for me personally, it's what I call that self scrutiny, right? It is looking at myself in the mirror and understanding that my thoughts are not mine, that I am the observer of the thoughts, that my feelings are not mine. I am the one who experiences those feelings, and that the emotions are not mine. I am one that experiences those emotions. And that is a very difficult, that is one of those paths that once you embark on that, you cannot unsee it, you cannot ignore it. It's very difficult for for an individual, especially for a man who's been raised in a bubble where not only you don't express to others how you feel, but in silence, whatever you feel, you squelch down, you push down, and you don't deal with it, right? Um, that To go from that upbringing, right, of ignoring the feelings, ignoring the emotions, to actually observing them
Yeah.
and then to questioning them
And they're
and
just loving them, right? To
and
be,
then just
like
loving them, right?
we miss that bit, right? And bring
Yeah,
in some
yeah.
like, oh my God, I love you. I love you that you're feeling a bit sad. Or, the goal of life is not to be happy, right? And it's like,
Yes.
once we love and respect the human journey and not make any parts of us the enemy, right? As the mind is not the enemy, the feelings, emotions are not the enemy. It's just as it is. And the moment we love and respect all parts of us, everything changes.
Oh no, I agree with you. I tell my kids and I tell my friends all the time. It's like, when you feel sad, right, or when you feel depressed, or you feel blue, as people say, you don't become sadness. You just a being experiencing sadness. It's just like when you get the flu. You don't become the virus. You're just experiencing the virus, right? and they look at me and it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But how do you get people, as a coach, and as you talk to men, they come to you with these types of things. How do you get it from it making sense up here to actually them doing it? Because I think that's where the challenge is for men who
Hmm.
have been living a certain way to then say, you know what, I do love myself. I do love who I am. I do, or I am going to do the things that I need to do in order to be able to love who I am. How do you get from one side of the line to the other side of the line?
Again, it's explaining this really helps, as in like an emotion is just an emotion, and to give an experience of perhaps when I didn't cry, and then I done my coaching training and cried, and nobody was like, "Hey, here's a tissue," or "You need to fix you." It was just, "Oh, she's having an emotion. What are your tears saying?" And to give respect to the emotion, to give respect to what comes up, and honor and witness, and even like, depending what it is, if it's anger, then going with them with the anger. Okay, let's shout and scream, and then next thing you know, bam, there's tears, because no one's been able to be with the anger with them in such a way that kind of mirrored it back to them, so that then they could go, okay, behind that anger was loads of sadness, and it just comes out. And I think the moment you kind of explain it and explain how the body holds it, and you do more embodiment, because you can be logically, and most of us can be logically in our minds, right? So we're in our up here, but then we go, okay, your body holds so much, and then that's okay. So where is it going on? Right, my heart, right, stop, boom, shut your eyes. And then, like, just going through these embodiment stuff, their body will just do stuff and release stuff. And it's like so quickly they can move through that, right? And, come out of that. And just being in that process and going, okay, it's okay. Because I think the fear for many people, especially men, is they're going to cry and never going to be able to stop. And actually, if that is the case, eventually you will. But, you can quickly transition. And your body hormonally needs that transition. It needs that release. Like other ways your body needs a release as a man every now and again. It's the same with tears. Hormonally, your body gets rewired. It produces the right chemicals. And then it allows you to flow more. And this is where depression is repressed emotions. We don't want to repress. We don't want to be robots. We don't want to be AI. We want to feel. We want to expand. And then we'll be able to connect to others. Because if we haven't gone through that, how can I sit there with your tears if I haven't been with my tears? Because it's scary, right? I'm going to run. And then how do you have a deeper relationship? How do you make love with the person crying? Because it's so beautiful when you haven't even sat with your own tears. How do you experience different things and see the beauty in these different things?